What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at my house. We've been here quite a lot. I guess it makes up for being at St. Vitus for 30 days in a row.
I'm wearing a St. Vitus shirt. Look
yeah.
At that. Whoa.
Makes me feel like I'm at home.
You're just right back at St. Vitus.
Yeah,
that's it.
At my other home, pretty
That's
much.
Right.
But we are here with Earl of Seven Sons. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here because I really feel like I've always had this discussion whenever I'm drinking with fellow metalheads that metalheads have the greatest appreciation for classical music. And with Seven Sons being a string quartet, but covering like This Love by Pantera and 43% Burned by the Dillinger Escape Plan, I feel like you really proved that you have everything one could love about classical music and metal, right?
I think they're super related.
Absolutely.
I think, like Vivaldi is actually pretty much metal without the distortion. If you like listen to like Winter, like the Four Seasons, you know what I mean? Like it's the rhythmic drive is absolutely there. There's a lot of borrowing for sure from classical music, sometimes unconscious and sometimes very conscious. I mean, like Randy Rhoads loved this shit.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, and he totally incorporated. Like you listen to like Suicide Solution,
yep.
Right? Like if like the end of it, like the guitar solo. I read this thing. It's not for me. I'm not the smart guy here. Like I was reading this. Somebody wrote like some dissertation about this. Right? This guy, Robert Walzer. Right? So he wrote this giant, like I don't know whether it was postdoctorate or whatever it was, but it was like this thing about like the relationship between heavy metal and classical music. And this guy broke down Randy Rhoads's like guitar solo, like, you know, when he stops, the song stops, and all that stuff. And it basically exactly mirrors the harpsichord solo in Bach's Brandenburg, the fifth Brandenburg Concerto. Like the first movement stops, and then there's this giant wacky like harpsichord solo. And you wouldn't think, like, you'd think, oh, it's harpsichord, it's fancy, you know, like whatever. But like it's, if you listen to it, it's pretty fucking brutal. It's really, really crazy and ornate and out there. And Rhoads models, probably consciously, because he was pretty outspoken about how much he loved this music. He modeled Suicide Solution after the cadenza and the.
Well, you see a lot of it. Like my first take, to see how much metal is inspired by classical music is a band like Avenged Sevenfold. Like if you listen to the City of Evil record, I mean,
I have to admit, I never listened to Avenged Sevenfold.
To each his own. But you know, that's very driven from classical music. And then, you know, you take like a lot of these symphonic bands like Camelot or Epica or
Dimmu Borgir.
Yeah. Like it's all very like symphonic based. And there's a very famous meme going around that classical music is just heavy metal before electricity.
If you think of it as coming from, I don't know, I'm pulling shit out of my ass now. Like before, I was talking real shit. There was like this dissertation, like whatever. But now I'm just gonna like talk shit and just see what happens. But like, all right. So if you figure that both styles of music are actually, you know, one could make an argument, but at least metal, aside from its origins in like rock and roll and like all that kind of shit, but like the metal itself comes from Western Europe, right? And then classical music is also coming from Western Europe. I mean, like there's always going to be cross-cultural shit. I mean, like I think there's other conversations revolved around class that I probably don't have time for here. Mm-hmm. You know, like but like, all right, so like you figure like a band like fucking like Emperor or something, right? Like, so these are like the black metal dudes, right? Like they're totally taking from like Norwegian like melodies, right? And folk like pre-Christian, like what they imagine to be like pre-Christian shit, right? Like, and they're just like taking the shit, but guys like Edvard Grieg or like, you know, these classical composers they're mining from the same field. Mm-hmm. Basically, you know what I'm saying? So it's like it gets represented in different ways that represent the time and place that you're at, you know? But it's the same shit. Like it's still mining from similar cultural points.
Absolutely. And I was curious with your particular band, Seven Sons, like, was there something that came first? Were you like classically trained, learning from classical orchestrated symphonies, or were you like a metalhead first and kind of looked backwards?
I would say probably, officially speaking, I was probably a classical guy first because I started playing the violin when I was 5, right? So I didn't even really, my parents, they're immigrants from this country. They didn't have a broad musical.
From where?
My mom is from the Philippines and my dad is from Thailand.
Okay.
So they didn't really have a broad sense of American music. I mean, of course, like they liked the Beatles, you know what I mean? Like, so, but like, growing up at home, but when I was a really little kid, it was just the Carpenters and like, whatever, who's that guy that's like Spanish eyes, like whatever, like just shitty, whatever, like, shitty 70s shit, you know what I mean? Like, and the Beatles and the Carpenters were basically it, so like I was taking violin lessons and it was just, all I knew really was classical music. That changed when I was like 12 or 11, something like fifth grade. So whatever the fuck fifth grade is. Fifth grade, Master of Puppets, I think, had just come out.
Oh wow, you were in 5th grade at that?
I'm 41, dude. Yeah, yeah. So Master of Puppets.
When I was in 5th grade, Master of Puppets was like 25 years old.
Dude, fuck you, man. Don't make me feel old.
I do that with everybody.
Yeah, it's all good. But anyway, somebody passed me a tape. Do you know what a cassette tape is?
Yes.
You youngins, you young kids,
yes,
you young children. Do you know what a cassette tape is? It's magnetized. Anyway, so some kid passed me. Actually, some kid, I remember his name was Kid Eric Winky, passed me this cassette of Master of Puppets, and that shit just fucking blew my mind. Like I was just like, what the fuck is this? This is crazy. This is awesome. And so that was it. Like, I was totally, metal from there on out. And I was going to, my first show was actually an underground hardcore show. When I was like,
wow,
13, and like how they have like shows. It was Our Lady of Lourdes. They have shows like in church basement, like all ages.
Yeah.
Shows. So I remember it, man. It was this band, No Redeeming Social Value.
Oh, I know those guys.
You know those guys?
Yeah.
All right, so that was my first show, and there was
really,
like,
that's real New York City hardcore.
Yeah, dude, I'm Queens boy, So so No Redeeming Social Value, and another band called Shift. And
I've heard of it, but I never.
So old shit. Like I think another band called 13 Stitches.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
So that was the first. So then I led this kind of weird double life. You know what I mean? Because like the kids I grew up with in my neighborhood. Again, speaking of class differences, is interesting. So you're talking about classical music versus metal and punk and like this kind of stuff. Like when I was going to violin school. I mean, like you had kids flying in for their lessons on like fucking helicopters and shit. You know what I mean? Like I'm serious, dude. You know what I mean? Like and they're like you're like 15 years old and you have a Guadagnini. Guadagnini violin at the time was probably like $90,000 at the time. So now what is it now? It's like I don't know the just for inflation.
Unaffordable.
It's like $200,000. It was unaffordable back then. You know what I mean? Like, but so you got guys coming in. Like on these instruments that their parents would buy them because they had the means and they had the like whatever. But again, like I said earlier, I'm a son of immigrants. I'm living in a working class neighborhood in Queens, and all my friends are like, it was basically Irish and Italian in my neighborhood. I was like the only Asian kid, but they were all into hardcore. They were all into metal. And that's the neighborhood I grew up in. So I led this weird double life. So like I would like sneak out and go to like CB's and like Lemoore. I don't know, there was this club back in the day.
CBGB's closed when I was 13.
So there was CB's and like I would go to this club called Lemoore and Bond Street Cafe and like the Wetlands and like these.
Yeah, I've heard of all those places.
Kinds of,
just from hanging out with hardcore people and telling and bragging about how much I missed.
Well, I was at the tail end of that because I think the flowering of New York hardcore was a little bit before my time because like guys like bands like Youth of Today and Sick of It All that was like 87, 88, and I was like just a little too young to be like going to these shows alone, like like a 13-year-old, like but I started going when I was like 14, 15 into the city, like kind of like lying to my folks, sorry mom, sorry dad, you know what I mean, like like lying to my folks and just kind of like sneaking out and going to see these shows then, but so I would go and get like fucked up in like a pit or something, or whatever, And
when your parents asked about the bruises,
like I got into a
them?
fight, you know, like I'd just be like, I got into a fight, you know, like, and this is all you're gonna say. But then I would go to like on weekends I would go to violin school, and it was like a completely different.
Oh, it was like Fight Club.
Like yeah, a little bit. Like, and that's I wasn't.
Oh,
that,
I can just picture you in like the string quartet with like just a total
like kind of like I got a shiner on, and I'm like wearing like a Jane's Addiction shirt or something. I don't know, like or whatever Metallica, what Slayer, or whatever shirt that I was wearing.
That's an awesome story.
What I was wearing, you know, like and you know, and like I'm like had like 7 eyes. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like they're like, what's wrong with this kid? You know what I mean? Like this, like whatever. So I had a very interesting kind of like schizophrenic experience.
Yeah, but that's got to be an interesting story. You know, we were going to talk a little bit about this, but I was reading about Ben from Dillinger Escape Plan. He kind of had like a similar sort of life where like he had like a full corporate job. Like he would like working in like, I forgot, it was like in law or something. He'd come in a suit and tie, and then right afterwards he would just like Superman just rip it off and then go to like a punk and hardcore show and then come back. It was like,
well, Dillinger was still happening if I remember him saying it correctly. He like, I don't want to misquote, you know, but I think he was doing both for a while until like, I mean like, because I mean like I like right, the tours with like Botch and like whatever, they were like in a van. They weren't like self-sustaining quite yet. You know what I mean? Like, so you got to have a day job to, you know.
Man, that's one hell of a day job.
Yeah.
Just imagine. But I really find it interesting that you have like this real like classical training and then have this love for hardcore, because a lot of people are kind of quick to judgment. Oh, you're classically trained, so you know you're upper class, and you look down at the hardcore underground. And,
you get it from both ends.
Yeah,
you get it from both ends.
And then you have like the hardcore people. Oh my god, those guys must smell weird and like be too classy for this shit. And,
well, yeah, no. So it's, you know, I think it used to concern me more when I was younger.
Yeah, but now you don't give.
I just don't give a fuck anymore. You know what I mean? Like I just do. I think, you know, whatever level of, like, whatever freedom I have to like write the music that I write, and the fact that I'm very happy that I've found like kind of a unique voice in which to like write music, has come because of the synthesis of these two things.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I don't begrudge it at all. Like I said, I think I was a little uncomfortable. Like I didn't quite know how to be in both scenes.
Yeah.
In a way, but I would say this. I'll come out and say this. Like the metalheads and the punks are far more welcoming and just cool.
Absolutely.
With like shit than like the classical side.
Well,
there's a lot more like cultural norms that are being violated. And,
yeah.
Like, you know, like.
I honestly will never know about that. You know, I was taking classical piano lessons, and my teacher, like, I showed my teacher, like, bands like Avenged Sevenfold and Disturbed and even Cannibal Corpse, and he was just like, wow, I could hear this in a symphony. Like, you know, granted, he was very open-minded, and he was also a teacher for a long time, constantly hearing young kids' music, so maybe that helped him, but... You know, it's really interesting because not only are you involved in the hardcore scene, in the classical scene, but because your band is predominantly instrumental, right?
Right.
So there's also an instrumental scene, especially in the city, with bands like Samhat and You Bred Raptors, Fall of the Albatross, and all these guys. Yeah, which is a phenomenal style of music, and I think that you kind of like wear many different hats with Seven Sons, despite being a string quartet, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, although I wouldn't, none of it is, no, I take it back. Some of it is calculated for sure, in the sense of like, we know what a Seven Sons, either an original or a cover, should sound like, right? For sure. It is calculated in that way. But once like the parameters are set, and these loose parameters are kind of set, I don't think any of us really think about what hat we're wearing at a particular time, because we cover Travolta by Bungle, right? But we also cover we cover Pantera, and that's wildly different. Like Bungle and Pantera are two like totally different within that umbrella of like extreme music, right?
Absolutely.
Like, totally different things.
Yeah.
You know? But we don't really think about. We don't think it's a different hat.
Was Apocalyptica at all ever like an inspiration for you
No.
guys?
You know, I got all right. So
I can only imagine that people have compared you to them one
yeah,
way.
sure, of course. Like, but you know, because people need frames of reference. You know what I mean? Like, I don't begrudge them that at all. Like, that's totally fine. If you know, but for me, I just and it's personal taste. I'm not shit talking them. They might be, you know, they're probably lovely people. I don't know them, you know, but
I saw them live on 2 occasions and they were phenomenal.
that's great.
So
That's great. No, I think I wanted to like them because actually I think the covers of Metallica
that's
fucking
just
awesome.
That's just I mean the S&M Orchestra and them like
Fucking
together
fantastic.
prove that Metallica is as classical as Mozart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like, see, I wanted to like them, so like I went out and bought a bunch of their albums, right? And like, but for me, and it's only like again, it's only personal taste. It was too lush, and it was too romantic, and I don't like romantic in this kind of like.
I after discovering you guys, I looked you up after the Dillinger show.
It's like the same reason why I don't like Opeth.
Okay, and you know what? It's actually good that you bring that up because I was listening to you guys and comparing it to Apocalyptica, and Apocalyptica is very classical driven and very. You guys have like an eeriness to it. Like I call you guys heavy orchestra. Like that's
cool, man.
Or like orchestrated core or something like that.
Orchestra core.
You know, you just have to put core.
Chamber core, whatever the fuck. Yeah,
Chamber core. That's a good band name. But you get the idea, like, and again, like, I keep coming back to this, but you covered songs that, like, when I heard a song like One by Metallica, I mean, of course, I've played it on piano, that could definitely be transcribed to anything, but, you know, a Mr. Bungle song or a Dillinger Escape Plan song, I mean, that's where you kind of really have to flick around, and I think with Seven Sons, you guys absolutely do that.
Oh, thank you, man. That really means a lot, that it was translatable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I covered a Sepultura song on piano, and people are
Which
like...
one? Which one?
Desperate Cry. And people think, like, how the fuck do you take Max Cavalera's vocals, Andreas
Is that the one?
It's off a rise.
No, I know, but is the riff?
It's like this. It starts off very slow and then kind of picks up.
Desperate Cry.
And people are like, how the fuck do you take Max Cavalera's vocals, Andreas' guitar playing, Paulo's bass playing, and Igor's drumming and make that into a piano? And I was like, here you go. I also covered a Gojira song. And songs that people would think that can't be transcribed on these types of instruments. But Seven Sons, I really think, disproves that you could transcribe anything.
I think it's just translating between languages. If you're like familiar with the rules of each genre, then I think it's possible because you might not find a word that matches it exactly in the other language, but you find a similar one, and then you know how to say that word with the correct accent in the translated language. So that's how I think one writes or does effective crossing in that way. You know what I mean? Like, but I think people run into problems when, like, okay, so I'm going to digress for a quick second, but just to illustrate what I mean. When I first graduated, when I first got out of school, a lot of musicians, you know, they spend all this money and time being like training for to be a professional musician, but the jobs are like this much. And the amount of kids graduating is like this much. It's like huge. It's fucking ridiculous, right? So everybody's trying to find their career path. Everybody's trying to like do whatever, right? So then I was talking to this girl, and she's like, I think I'm gonna be a hip hop violinist, right? And I said, okay, that's cool, right? I guess you're like super into hip hop, right? Like what? Like that's your deal? And she's like, I mean, I don't know, not really. I just saw this woman. I saw Marie Ben-Ari play with Jay-Z, so I thought that was pretty cool, and like maybe I could do something like that, right? And I was like, yo, all right, so you don't listen to like, all right, so do you 5 hip hop albums? Do you know like 5 hip hop? Do you like you know, Enter the 36 Chambers, you know, like whatever, like Low End Theory, like whatever, you know, like just like even, I'm not really into hip hop, but like if I can fucking name 5 seminal hip hop albums and you fucking can't, like
You deserve that hip hop spot.
what are you doing? Like no, but I'm saying I don't even because I don't live that life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't speak at best. Hip hop for me is like a 5th language that I can ask where's the bathroom and like how do I get to, you know what I mean? Like I'm looking for the library. You know what I'm saying? Like if we're using that as a language analogy, right? Metal and classical music both I speak fluently, right? So if we're using those analogies, right? So each language, each culture, I've sat with for a very long time, right? So if this girl wants to do hip hop and she can't even fucking name a Wu-Tang album, what is she doing, right? So in that sense, when you ask how do you translate, if you know how to play piano, right? So you're aware of classical norms.
More or less.
Right?
More or less.
You fucking know Sepultura.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like so that's how I think arrangements and crossovers become interesting.
Well, I was curious, do you utilize the classical techniques you learned into covering heavy metal songs? Like, do you take everything you've learned studying classical music, or did you have to come up with like a whole new style of playing to do it?
Both. I mean, I think I actually just contributed to a book written by a really awesome violinist, this guy Tracy Silverman.
Yeah.
Called 22 Groove Studies, because violin, as far as string playing, rhythm is not necessary. A groove is not concentrated on because it's such a lyrical instrument naturally that a lot of the training goes towards lyricism. So he came out with a groove book, and he asked me to contribute a piece on more like metal and extreme music kind of style for the violin. So to answer your question, it's grounded in classical music, like all the technique I could, it's, the Franco Belgian bow hold, blah, 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 right? But in order to play relentless, right? Like you have to torque your arm in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
You have to kind of like the shoulder, like, you know what I mean? Like you have to think, everything has to be like simultaneously heavier, but more relaxed. Because you need the endurance, but you still need, it's like kind of like throwing a hard punch, like you have to twist your hip like more, like turn your hip more, but like you can't like the mistake that people,
that was a good analogy.
Yeah, like when people try to punch and they think they're punching hard, they load their hand and they go like this, and they're kind of like coming like this, but that's like a very weak punch, and then you end up like hurting yourself and like whatever. But like if you're using your whole body, you're torquing, like those things, it becomes more powerful and you're not working so hard, if that makes any sense. So the same analogy came through this kind of a little bit of a different technique of violin playing. So it is a little different. For instance, I wrote a violin concerto that was premiered in Phoenix Symphony with Tito Munoz conducting and the violinist Rachel Barton Pine is also a metalhead, premiering the concerto. And I had written a series of 16th notes to 8th notes, but like they were like relentless in the violin part, violin one part, in the orchestra part. Rachel already knows what to do, but like, so it's basically right, like just kind of like
sounds like a Fear Factory song.
Yeah, like what? Actually, it's that rhythm is so. I mean, it appears in Lamb of God. It appears in Fear Factory. It appears in it appears in Kill Switch does it. I mean, like everybody does this rhythm. Right? Yeah, like so in one way or another. So this rhythm appeared, and the instructions were down bow, down bow, down bow, down bow, down bow, down bow. Because you're not going to go dug-a-da. You're going to lose the feel, right? So then the concertmaster raises his hand. He says, "Maestro, this is not possible. Whoever wrote this doesn't know violin technique, right? And they can't. This is not possible. So let's come up with an alternative solution." So the conductor Tito, I'm sitting in the back of the hall, right? And Tito goes, "Earl, come here for a second," because they don't know that I'm a violinist, right?
Yeah.
So I come over, and Rachel hands me her violin, And Tito goes, "Can you please show the concertmaster how you do that line?" So I did it, and it was not fair because like I've been working this slightly altered technique for years. So I just did it, but like I was kind of a dick. I just kind of did it, like for like a while, like an uncomfortably long time.
Yeah.
And so then he was like, "Oh well, I guess I'm wrong," which was cool, So he was just like, "I guess it is possible. I didn't know it was possible."
Well, that's really cool that you were able to like prove that, and that's a really unique. Because look, I mean, you look at how many different guitar techniques, like people, nobody thought that a guitar would sound like until a band like Meshuggah or came around. Nobody really thought of this da 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 sound. You look at a band like Fear Factory and see how like Dino lined up his guitar playing with Raymond's drumming so well. To me, it's just really cool that I think you did what a lot of innovative metal guitar players did with the violin.
Fucking A, sweet.
Yeah, so good for you. Now, I did want to bring this up. I don't want to go too much into it, but like as I mentioned before, the first time I ever saw Seven Sons, and the last time so far, because I sadly missed your last show at St. Vitus like a bitch, but I saw you play with Dillinger Escape Plan, the final Dillinger Escape Plan show. Yeah. Now, you played hardcore shows, you've played all these different things. Dillinger Escape Plan, to me, I don't know what the hell you call that band. I was wondering...
You know what Ben calls it?
What?
A punk band.
Ben refers to Dillinger Escape Plan as
punk band.
All right, I need to talk to Ben about this. Ben, get on here one day. I got to talk to you about this.
He's not wrong. Think about it.
A lot of people say, and
of course he's not wrong. His fucking band. But
he's a credible source about his own band. But like a lot of people, and I'm guaranteed people are going to want to shit in my mouth for saying this, but like a lot of people associate them with being part of the metalcore movement.
You know what? I can't.
This is what I'm hearing.
It's all semantics, dude. I think look, you go. You know where the worst place on earth is? The worst place on earth.
Jersey?
No. Well, yes. No.
Sorry, I had to.
Sorry. No, it's the comments section of the fucking Metal Sucks. It's like the worst place ever. Like the Metal Injection or like these. You come out with an article and there's like fucking like lines of awful bullshit that like go down
it's mathcore or it's metalcore.
Yeah, it's just like some of the most like shitty, stupid comments. Like it's like if you want to just waste your life, like read the comment section of Metal Sucks.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I'm actually I do read these comments sometimes because I do like to hear what people say about it. Like, oh, it's mathcore. Oh, it's rockcore. It's this, and I actually Google these genres that people are saying. And the best part is that like a Wikipedia article comes up with like 2 bands in that category.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like did you see that article where was it Frederick or was whatever? Maybe Meshuggah as a band apologized for creating Gent. Did you see this?
Yes.
Right.
I'm like, whether you like it or not, obviously that wasn't their intention. They didn't go into the studio being like, ooh, let's invent Gent.
No artist goes in intentionally trying to do stuff.
Yeah, if they did that, they would be disappointed.
That's fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Because if you're going in there being like, I'm gonna make all this new shit that nobody fucking has ever done. I'm gonna fucking create. Fuck you. Like and also like all like these like this sort of balkanization of genres, I think is the dumbest thing. It's like just because the drums do something slightly different. Oh well, he's doing a hammer blast beat instead of a blast beat. So everyone's thinking entirely.
You got to admit though, it does get people talking about metal, and I think that's
it's true, and that's a wonderful thing. I think that's great. I think it's fantastic.
I tried to have this discussion in art school, and people are just like, "What's a Slayer?" And I'm like,
"Fucking assholes."
So. I think in the end you get the best of both worlds to find that, because you take a lot of bands like. Look, a band like, I'll give you a good example, a band like Obscura. Uh-huh. They're a death metal band, but they have elements of prog in there. They have elements of gent. They have elements of technical death metal. And
sure.
Okay, so now let's go to the roots of technical death metal. People say Suffocation invented it, but Suffocation started around the same time as bands like Cannibal Corpse.
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, so did Suffocation really go, let's invent something called technical death metal.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not them, and I actually don't know the guys in Suffocation, so I can't
They're
say.
great guys.
But
great guys.
I don't think they were good guys. Let's make a new thing.
Yeah.
Like, I think you write the music that you like. You write the music that sounds good to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think anybody at the end of the day sits down and says that, and I think if it's successful, they try to be honest with themselves. They go, okay, well, what do I want to write? I want to write this. I'm gonna write this. And then you like it, great. You don't like it, what the fuck am I gonna do?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That's it.
Exactly.
You know, like, there's nothing more to say. I think about that. Although it's good that people like you have to talk about it somehow, right?
Yeah, because honestly, that's how you get people open into. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, a lot of younger kids, they would say that they're into death metal, and they would say that they're into bands like Whitechapel or Suicide Silence or Chelsea Grin, and that
which to me is not.
that's along the deathcore spectrum of things. But like, do you know what their roots are? Check out Deicide, check out Morbid Angel, check out Suffocation.
Right.
You know, and
do they know? Do the young whippersnappers know? Do they know?
Who knows? I mean, you know, what got me into metal was Avenged Sevenfold and Disturbed, and I've always said, if it wasn't for Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park, I would not be into Tomb of the Mutilated by Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah. Well, although it was real sad about that guy.
Yeah, I love Linkin. I got the tattoo for Hybrid Theory, but like, you get the idea. Like, everybody has a different gateway. Like,
sure.
You know, I got into metal through Linkin Park, but I know people whose like their first metal band was Stained. You know, and look, the whole idea on heaviness too. Like, you talk to like the average suburban soccer mom. Always the music you listen to heavy like Creed.
Right.
They would think a band like Creed is like
devil
music.
I say Master of Puppets for me because I was actually thinking about like the actual branch off, but right before that, like a month before, was Def Leppard.
Yeah.
So you're talking about branches. I guess I should have said earlier, like, yeah, Def Leppard's was Hysteria.
Yeah, that's a freaking classic.
Right. So that's not really metal either, right?
But, no, but you know, in the but during that time, people were probably looking at it like people would look at Cannibal Corpse now. You know, jazz music was considered to be the devil music at its time, and even classical music. Like, you know, I'm pretty sure people were looking at Beethoven with a twitching eye.
Well, man, Coltrane was really, for instance, like, you know, like, especially like at the time of the civil rights movement, like all that stuff. He was really like at the forefront. If you listen to like 60s era like Coltrane, that shit sounds downright dangerous.
Yeah.
And it was for its place in time, you know, and you can still hear it like now, like in the context of it. It's dangerous music. So yeah.
Well, being that, and I definitely wanted to bring this up, being an instrumental band, and I mentioned this when I was interviewing, I don't know if you know the guys in Sanhat or Sonnet.
No, I don't know Sanhat.
Yeah, but they're a real awesome band. Check them out.
Cool.
But like, as an instrumental band, I've noticed that, like, and I asked Angel Vivaldi this as well, like, as an instrumental band, you clearly have a message behind your music and everything, but being that you don't have lyrics, do you take like a different approach at expressing your message, depending, you know?
Sure. I think it all boils down to really using notes and gestures and like your tone and how you manipulate tone to kind of speak your emotional affect. Like, what is this section supposed to make you feel? Are you supposed to feel happy? Are you supposed to feel sad, angry? You know, are you raging? Are you like what? Are you terrified? Like, what is it that I'm trying to say here in this section, right? Like, so with the stuff on For the Heart Still Beating, right? Like, we as a quartet went to Rikers Island to volunteer. I have a meditation teacher, and he is the chaplain at Rikers, and so he brought my quartet in, and we were working with the inmates and the guards, like in this sort of like a meditation sort of like seminar kind of thing going on, and it was, you know, needless to say, I mean, like I'm kind of speaking the obvious. It's like a fucking terrifying place.
Of course, it's Rikers.
Terrifying, like, you know, like, and then. And not only that, like the bureaucratic nightmare that precedes. So these, you know, like there's a reason why the place is so fucked. Also, it's all like from top to bottom. Like, you go there, they give you say you're going there like 3 weeks in advance, then they can't find your papers, then they don't know who you are. Then you don't even know calling this office, and like you're waiting there for like 2 hours before we even go in. Sometimes you don't go in at all because they just there's no you don't have permission to. It's a bunch of bullshit.
When I was in daycare, my daycare lady's boyfriend was a prison guard there. So.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, at 4 years old.
At 4 years old, you don't really know.
Well, but at 5 years old, I always thought that guy was fucked up in the head. Little did I know.
Well, yeah.
So
and actually, you know what's so scary? You go in. When you go into the prison, there's all these. There's the women's, there's the teen, there's the juvenile, like whatever. But when you first enter, there's a hallway with like pictures of all the corrections officers that died.
In the prison?
In the prison. Like in the line of duty. It's a big fucking wall, dude. Like it's
whew.
So there's that too. Anyway, so I wrote 2 pieces on For the Hearts based on our experiences at Rikers, and I wanted to convey that feeling of like claustrophobic terror. You know what I mean? Like, but there's nobody like speaking it. So, man, I kind of wish I had my violin because I would actually just show you. You know what I mean? Like, but
well, the audio would not be too good.
No, but that's all right. It doesn't need to be that good, you know. But where you put the bow and you play like harder near the bridge, it sounds super harsh. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then like that if you hear that something that goes, it's not like you don't envision being in the fucking park.
Well, it's funny actually. Going back at that final Dillinger show that I saw you at, that was the final song was Disassociation. I think you played.
Yeah, we were last tune.
That was okay. It was the final ever Dillinger Escape Plan show. I was witnessing history. It was the final Dillinger show,
right,
as far as we know. And that violin, hearing Greg Puciato already has a very emotional voice, but like
sure.
Hearing you guys play along to that, like I got chills, being like, this is the final seconds of a very well-known, well-respected, innovative band, and you guys added to that emotion. Like people were killing each other in that pit, and then I just saw a round of emotion that I've never seen people stand so still at a Dillinger Escape Plan.
That's true.
Yeah, but like you get
that's true.
You get the idea, like.
Yeah.
But like, and I really think that, people have asked me, how can you, when I hear Animals as leaders, I think of all types of things in an instrumental band like that, but they're not saying anything. So, but in the end, I think it's really just a different language I really consider to be what you guys do, almost the equivalent of lyrics, because you capture emotion, and capture an essence of rage in what you do.
Well, done right. I mean, like, musically you can say more than words, because like once you put it into words, you make it concrete, right? Like you say, like whatever, whatever, how awesome the lyric is, like now in the hour, awaiting the hour of reprisal, like your time slips away. What else is he saying? He's, what else is Tom Wright talking about? He's talking about this, he's talking about hell, right? Yeah. So, but that's what it is. But when you have no words, your mind makes its own story.
Your mind makes its own story. It's clearly open to interpretation, but at the same time, you could definitely hear an essence of emotion. You
right.
know what I mean?
And so you connect with that emotion, hopefully, in a way that's much more like it's personal to you, because you are filling in the blanks with your emotional color.
Absolutely. And that's what I really think Seven Sons does by listening to you guys. I definitely look at This Love by Pantera a little bit differently.
It's so, it's that was so early. We did that to me now, like a long time ago. I think I've been thinking about new things to cover, and part of me just kind of even though I grew up listening to Pantera and like Megadeth and like all this kind of stuff, part of me kind of wants to sort of stay away from that kind of a thing, because I feel, although it's great, I'm glad you like it. I'm glad. I mean, we still play it live, Yeah. Although there was a little while that we were not playing it because I was like, I just didn't like what Phil and Summer was doing.
Yeah.
But like we're I think I know I'm trying to look for things that are more aligned with the originals that I'm writing, like the more like the compositions that I'm putting out. So like I think I'm more gearing towards things like I would like to do a botch tune. you know, like or something like that, you know, like. But I think I wouldn't necessarily mind.
I got a couple of ideas for songs you can cover.
You let me know.
I'll tell you off the air. But before we go, I want to thank you so much for coming over here. It's an honor to talk with you about this. Is there, we're also promoting the show with Candiria, Bern, Netherlands, you guys, and Locked in a Vacancy. It's going to be absolutely awesome. Is there just anything else you'd like to promote or any shout outs you'd like to give?
No, we're doing that October 20th show. We're in the studio working out some stuff, and so there's nothing really on our end besides the Candiria thing. We're going to Alaska.
You're playing a show in Alaska?
Yeah.
Bring your corpse paint.
We're going to be in Fairbanks in February,
wow.
which is cool.
Woo! I've always wanted to see Alaska, but I'm not going there in the middle of winter.
Yeah, no, you bookers freeze. I've been there before.
Oh, really?
Cool.
But I mean, I've always wanted to. I interviewed a well-known man from Alaska, 36 Crazy Fists.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I was so happy to do that interview. But
was that cool?
Nicest guys ever, and that was a high school bucket list sort of
nice
thing. But Earl, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Earl of Seven Sons, everybody.